Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
These are tough times, and they're getting even tougher. The clock is ticking. The countdown to collapse is well underway. What are you going to do about it? Will you just wait for it to happen, or will you be ready when it happens? The decision is yours, and yours alone. Join myself, Mickey Fulp, Robert Ian, David Morgan, Jeff Berwick, Elijah Johnson, Alan Butler, Gregory Manarino, Daniel Amaduri, Andy Hoffman, Tekoa Da Silva, Trace Mayer, one of the world's leading Bitcoin authorities, Bix Weir, Jay Taylor, and Gary Christensen at the Liberty Mastermind Symposium in Las Vegas on February 21st and 22nd, and learn how to create your plan to survive the collapse. The last Liberty Mastermind Symposium was one of the most highly rated conferences ever, and this one promises to be even better. Don't miss it. Join us and register now at libertymastermind.us. libertymastermind.us. This one is going to be out of this world, and it's going to be even better because it's in Las Vegas, Nevada. Go to Liberty Mastermind US and sign up today. You are listening to the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. Well, no doubt you're familiar with her. She's the author of Juggling Dynamite and the popular blog site jugglingdynamite.com. Yes, we're talking about her, Danielle Park. And how are you, Danielle?
I'm good. I'm freezing, and it's snowy and cold up here in Canada, but I'm a happy person nonetheless, Kerry.
Hey, well, it was freezing down here this morning in lovely Palm Beach County, Florida. It was all of 61 degrees. You know, somebody put up on my Facebook page a picture of these here United States, and all of the states were blue and purple and looked really nasty. And then you got down to that little peninsula called Florida, and it was yellow and orange, and it looked really inviting, and I was very happy to say that I was there. So not to gloat, but I'm gloating anyway. Hey, I was up in the People's Republic of New York City and State over the weekend. I land at LaGuardia Airport on Friday, and it's nice and sunny, and it's like 30 degrees, cold by virtually any standard. And I have my nice winter coat. I'm wearing a sweater underneath, and I was plenty comfortable. Saturday comes along. It's snowing. We get 3 to 6 inches in Westchester County. Saturday, they have this bacchanalian degenerate thing called SantaCon, which is where thousands of young adults dress up as Santa Claus for this massive pub crawl. And basically, they start out in the morning in the East Village, very appropriate venue to start, and they start drinking. And they keep drinking and drinking till they're sick, and I guess they're blacking out, and it's freezing, it's snowing, and it just turns your stomach. And you realize that Western civilization, as we know it, unless there's some massive consciousness-raising expansion going on, Danielle, just doesn't have a chance.
Well, listen, abuse of alcohol in particular is a worldwide phenomenon. I think no matter where I've traveled, that's been the case, whether it's Eastern civilization or Western or any other kind. It seems like abuse of alcohol is a very dominant theme, and especially in the young people. So, I always look at it like this, again, excuse me, I know I'm boring, but I love health. I love, treating myself and my family well so that we feel good and strong and fit and useful, So I like to have a drink, but drinking much impacts your health, like not just in a long-term sense, but you feel bad, right? If you stay up late and have too much to drink, the next day you feel awful. You get up slow. Yeah. You don't want to go to the gym. You feel dehydrated. And I just think, if we could get people back focused on, what makes sense for their health so that they have a vibrant, productive life and they feel good about themselves, then they don't need to go through all this nonsense trying to pretend like they're having a good time by, destroying themselves.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me. Hey, and I love wine. I'm a real wine lover, but I have 3 glasses at the most. Last night I was at a place called N2. It's a new wine bar opened up in Delray Beach, Florida. The proprietor, guy named Ron, from someplace in Tennessee or Kentucky, very charming, hospitable guy, turned us on to many different types of wine. It was wonderful. And there's no greater joy in life to me personally than opening up a new bottle of wine that's cheap and really wonderful and exciting. It's really a great experience. But, to go to excess and to get intoxicated and for the goal of your drinking to be intoxication rather than the sensual experience of a new bottle.
Or appreciation of the artisans that went to make the product, right? The whole grape making process or whatever it is that you like. Appreciation versus degradation is the two differences there, right? One
you nailed it.
Is to destroy and decimate, and one is to celebrate and reflect. And it's totally different pursuits. Exactly.
You nailed it. It's degradation. It's degeneration. It's sinful. I am not into the whole religious thing of sin and all that, but this was sinful. It turned my stomach. It made me ashamed of my country and my former home state there. And you can't enforce morality. Let's face it. Legislated morality is no greater failure. But it made me long for the days of prohibition. I got to tell you, because I know it's a failure, but public drunkenness turns my stomach. And what do you get from it? My mother used to say, if you're going to entertain, get paid. And, those people doing the stuff that they were doing. And then if you look on the Huffington Post, they've got videos of the brawls that took place after sunset. And God, you could wake up being injured, severely injured, and not knowing how it happened. Some of those people are blacking out. And hey, if you're getting that drunk, binge drinking, you really need some help. You need to go to AA. You need to get treatment. You need to take care of this, because you're not really living when you get that intoxicated. You're escaping from life. Anyway, enough of the philosophy. Let's get into our financial philosophy here, Danielle. Big money means even bigger room for errors. Headline in your blog, 78% of NFL players, 60% of NBA players go bankrupt within 5 years of retirement. Obviously, they are not clients of Venable Park, are they?
No. If they were, they wouldn't stay long, because we would sit them down and say, okay, here's the deal. You're making big income now, but you have no idea how long you're going to be able to make that income. An injury could come at any moment, and you're going to need a ton of savings to sustain a lifestyle after your career, especially if you don't have any other training or qualifications, and especially if you end up with a concussion or some serious injury. You're going to need to have some safety net in your life. But in fact, what happens is, we could even segue from the alcohol abuse to the whole, what is the end objective? I understand there's glory in playing a sport, a professional sport, or doing any particular career, I guess, really well. But let's take sports as its own standalone. How many people in the country aspire to be a professional athlete as their dream job, right? The dream of all dreams. But it seems to me that part of that dream is the financial freedom and resources that will bring your way, right? That it's not just love of the game, although that's also part of it, but it's the status, the recognition, and the lifestyle that you're able to afford by virtue of your talent. So the question is, if the whole career is about waste and degradation and not anything to do with sustenance and what will last, then you understand how people go so completely wrong in this pursuit. So there you go. Yeah, the statistics. I knew they were horrible. I know that anyone who gets big, really big money in bursts early on in their life, sometimes later on too, but let's say early on in their life, it's very human to make horrible money decisions. What I found interesting about that article that I linked to, the 5 reasons professional athletes go broke, it's behavior based. And, this is the thing that I talk about a lot, because no matter how many degrees, for example, a person may have, whether they have two postgraduate degrees or 0, doesn't necessarily matter in terms of this behavioral component to do with money. So people make the same classic errors. They all tend to spend way too much. As soon as the big paychecks come in, they adjust spending up, and they make their lifestyle so cumbersome and expensive it's very hard to sustain without wasting tons of money. And then, they get bad investment advice. This is a pet peeve of mine, as you know, but I work in an industry that is populated by some of the biggest salespeople in the world work in the money business, and it's got very little to do with what's in the client's best interest. It's all to do with what sounds complex and showy and what pays them tons. But no one's looking after the capital. And so they put, if a person's got a huge amount of a lump sum of money, the last thing they need is a ton of risk around that capital. They actually could afford to take very little risk and just compound it gently over time, and it's going to be there for them when they need it. But you just see all the classic errors. It's excessive spending, it's rampant risk taking, no risk management rules around the capital. Ramping up the lifestyle. The spouse typically is part of that. They think they're married to a superstar who's making a fortune, and they don't think about the money. Meanwhile, no one's thinking about the money. And guess what? They end up broke. But it's a sad story. But I actually like to talk about it, not because it's a sad story, Kerry. I like to talk about it because it's possible to learn from other people's mistakes. Back to that inverse mentor notion that I talk about.
Hey, that is a great point. And you know what? It wouldn't be so bad if they took $10 million and put it into a whole life policy with a very low load that had a dividend-paying mutual life insurance company that paid 5.5% a year, guaranteed that the dividends were guaranteed, right? That wouldn't be such a bad investment, would it?
Yeah, you could do a bunch of things like that, for sure. You could do that with some of the money. You could do guaranteed deposits at a, guaranteed certificates at a local union, credit union or bank. You could spread it around a couple of institutions. You could have, you could have a mix of some equities in there. But the problem is people think, this is classic. I wrote about this in my book. People in the financial business meet wealthy people and say, oh, you're wealthy, you can afford to take lots of risk. Like, it's completely back-assward. You shouldn't take tons of risk if you don't need to. I don't think anybody should take tons of financial risk with their savings. That's, you take the risk. The risk those people take is in the sport they're playing every day, where they're getting, the beat out of them, literally. And they could have a massive injury that would devastate their career at any moment. That is where the risk is taken. That's the same with every other job, except if you work on Wall Street, and then your risk belongs to other people. But if you're a surgeon, your risk is in the operations you're performing on a daily basis on people that could go wrong at any moment, right? That you could be sued. You could, that's what risk is. So once you get savings out of your career, I call it out of the fire and into the frying pan. You don't want to put it back in harm's way for, just willy-nilly at any time and all times, because that's a sure way to evaporate it.
Great point. And we got a story we're going to talk about up next about college presidents' pay that will turn your stomach on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com, 1230 WBZT. Hi, it's Kerry Lutz. I recently decided to move my retirement account into physical precious metals to hedge against the coming times. If you want to move an existing retirement account into physical precious metals that you can hold in your hand, tax-free, there's no company that can do it more quickly and efficiently than Regal Assets. It took them just 24 hours to open my new IRA account, and all I had to do was fill out one simple form. The best part is that Regal Assets does all the work for you. They cover the setup and administrative costs for 2013. If you're interested in making the same move I did, call 855-678-66 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620. That's 855-678-6620, or visit them at regalassets.com. You'll be glad you did, and tell them Kerry sent you. We are back with Danielle Park on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. So one industry that certainly has been exempt from the greater recession, depression, whatever your point of view is being a college president. Right, Danielle?
Yes. Well, again, when we go back to the financialization and marketing of the education concept that has gone on in the last, say, 20 years, and particularly over the last, say, 10 years, institutions of education used to be sort of, the people that ran them were decently paid, for sure, but they weren't, rock stars. They weren't seen as, some of the best paid people in the country, let's put it that way. And today, as colleges have, and let's face it, they've been fed by a government funding system that has allowed them to grow into these, huge conglomerates with, growth targets where they have to bring in, so and so more targets every year of new tuitions. And the focus became all about the growth and not about the outcome, right? Not about the end result, not about the quality of the education, not about how many people are able to find work in their field. Those haven't been the pay parameters. It's all been based on front-end loaded commission style, right? Really, that's how it works. So their bonuses have been all based on how many new tuitions they can get going, how many heads they can get on in the programs, and then the government funding flows to them, through various channels because of that. So we've really got this system all backwards again. So the extractive mentality that you and I have talked about, whether it's in big corporations where you're paying the executives to bump up the stock at all costs. So right away you find that capital is, wasted, routinely deployed into raising artificial things like stock valuations rather than long-term business planning, innovation, or R&D. And so you get these focus where the incentives are all aligned in the wrong way. And that's exactly what's happened with the college system as it's become massively bigger. As we've been telling all the young people they have to have post-secondary or they haven't got a hope, the costs of that system have ramped up with the marketing of it, and the commission-based executives, the presidents basically, are getting these enormous pay packages. Of the 550 president salaries that were in this survey, 180 of them took home more than $500,000 in 2001. Compared to 50 of those people who did that in 2004. That's kind of dated, but the median compensation for a college president in 2011 was $410,000. So, we're talking about the 1% now back in who's heading up these schools. And it just links to, again, how did we get more than $1 trillion of student debt in this country? Because, first of all, the marketing machine told everyone they needed to go to college. And second of all, the costs of that college experience have been ramping up. And the consumer credit bubble told everyone that while you're in college, you can also have a car, you can also have a cell phone, you should also have a laptop, you should also have an apartment, you should also go out binge drinking with your friends, right? So people have just got, completely bought that whole message, and now the education suffered, the system's feeble and fragile, and the people are just loaded up with debt. And so it's got to change. We need to revamp that model.
Exactly. And speaking of models, you've got a nice little thing on your blog here. You have to take a look at it to see it, but we'll put it up on the site. It's kind of like a little cyclical cycle, up, down, up, down. At the top of the cycle, greed/buy. At the bottom of the cycle, fear/sell. Next up, repeat until broke. And that fits in perfectly with Bloomberg reporters' paid bonus if they can move markets. Now, it used to be that if you reported with the intent to manipulate or move markets, you came to the attention of the SEC. Now I guess you just get a bonus and the SEC just turns a blind eye, right?
I don't know what the FCC thinks about this. I mean, yes, I agree with you. At some point, well, first of all, let's go back to the 20s. that the big boom in the late 20s had a lot to do with strategically placed stories by so-called journalists or op-ed pieces on business leaders or companies or shares, right? They seeded the mainstream media so they could suck in all the little guys and then, trade ahead of them, basically. So this story really stood out for me because back to the degradation of our institutions, this idea that journalism is just something you can buy, at any point to promote a story. When PR is sold as journalism, that's where the line is crossed. Journalism is supposed to be a legitimate, field of ethics where you report stories for the greater good and enlightenment of the people. That's really what the idea comes from. And that's why all the bad guys that get in power in all the countries, the oppressive regimes, all want to control the media, right? They always want to suppress whatever is being told to the public or shape it or manipulate it. And I'm afraid with the corporatization of all the big media channels, how they were all bought by these large conglomerates in the last few years and, controlled by the sponsors, now you have journalism that is often not balanced, not transparent, not fair. And here we find out not only that the actual reporters are being paid a bonus. Talk about, again, front-ending commissions and pay so that everyone's got this incentive to generate quick transactions, but no one's responsible or has any skin in the game for what happens after that. And that's why, people are sucked in by the machine and spit out in rubble on a regular basis. That's why, if you listen to the business media now, it's all about getting people to buy, mocking anybody that's got any cash or any conservative money that's not fully loaded in stocks at 5-year highs with record margin, by the way. And that's just the way the system works. So, I love that diagram because that is the truth. It's simply the way the system works and the way people are vulnerable to it is that they do, look at the fund flows over the last few months, Kerry. They were all positive into equities for the first time in 5 years, right? For the first time since 2007-8, when the markets were peaking then at 5-year highs, the average bear was pouring his little bit of savings that was left in, while the institutions are selling with their, like both feet, as I like to say. And that's what the fund flows are showing. You got a little bit of money trickling in from the whatever cash is left on the retail side. And don't forget, whenever someone's buying, they're selling it off someone else, and that's the institutions, because we're seeing large volume in selling right now. And unfortunately, the little guy will be in that till he loses his shirt again, and then will sell in fear at the bottom. And that's why very few people end up doing doing anything good when it comes to investing.
And the big guys clean clock, right?
Well, they do until they blow up in a spectacular fashion. Because don't forget, the human behavior element is not changed by zeros either. So just because large institutions have ridden up the QE waves in the last couple of years in particular, and some of them are selling, but most of them are restrained by their constating documents that they're not even allowed to go much out of stocks, and they have to recircle through or try and go to ones they think are, less perfectly valued or, diversify in whatever way they can across that asset class. But very few of them are mandated to ever actually sell equities. So they're kind of all in for the ride down as well. And it's the little people that sell and panic. The institutions tend to stay, as I say, because they're fully mandated. And they're also mandated by their prospectus usually that they have to add back. So when the market crashes and prices drop, they will typically be forced by this objective rule set to go in and buy back the top, back up their equities. So they can tend to do better over time than the regular people who sell and go out at the bottom and are too terrified to buy any when they should be buying some. But it's also the wave of margin, the margin sellers, the levered players that are at all-time record highs at the moment. They're the other people that are so devastating to the average fund or personal net worth, because they literally have to sell once prices fall, and that selling picks up. Rather than buying as prices are falling, the levered traders have to sell and sell and sell as prices are falling, and that really makes the downside that much more accentuated.
Yeah, you have the selling into the forced liquidation into a declining market, which is like a downfall on steroids, which really, just magnifies any downturn. And yeah, you've seen the margin debt just go, more and more, and it's at records, right? Record highs.
Yes, it is. And so I guess the other thing is, since human behavior is this way, the most productive thing that I have found to do about it is to recognize what classic steps we typically take to try and steel yourself, like steel as in STEEL, like
yeah, I knew what you meant.
Give yourself strong rule sets around what you will and will not do, and how much exposure you will take, and what kind of risk that because you have to look at what can go wrong, not only what could go right in a perfect scenario, and you have to really plan for the downside as well. But if you can set that up, and if you know that the masses don't do that, and the masses are going by a string and a prayer at all times and making every classic mistake in the book, then you can actually not be victimized by that. You can actually pull back and say, okay, I can't tell for sure when this is going to blow next, but I do know that all of these markers have been hit, which means that the probability are that it's not that much longer from now. And so then your focus has to be all about how to protect yourself so that you are one of the few strong ones that's able to step in and buy things when they're being sold in mass by everyone in fear and panic. And so, you, as I say, you can actually be strengthened by it. You don't have to be victimized by it.
Exactly. Great point. And then you can be on the right end of the timing the cycles instead of the wrong end, which I've been on many, many a time. So on that note, it's jugglingdynamite.com. You can also get Danielle's book there as well. Highly recommended reading. And Danielle's also got her own podcast now. You should check it out, as well as her YouTube videos, and go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Got a good one coming out on SantaCon 2013, of which I got to be an observer. Next year, I am going up there specifically to interview these Santas and figure out what the heck is going on there. You definitely want to see it yourself to believe it. financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Danielle, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Okay, Kerry. Thank you.
And
Bye.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Christmas to you too. Bye.
Thanks. What happens if the collapse never really comes? You need income, and Jason Hartman can help you get it. He's helped thousands of people realize their dreams of financial independence through real estate investing, and now he's got an unbeatable offer for you. He's offering my ebook, Forget Wall Street, Go for the Gold and Silver Too, for free. Just visit jasonhartman.com/Lutz. The first 100 Financial Survival Network listeners will get the book free. Remember, you can't afford to put all your eggs in one basket. Real estate should be part of a balanced investment portfolio along with gold and silver. Just go to jasonhartman.com/Lutz and sign up today. When it comes to real estate investing, Jason Hartman is the only person we trust on the Financial Survival Network. So make your money work as hard as you do by building an income property empire. Real estate is America's proven investment. Go to www.jasonhartman.com/Lutz and get your free ebook today. That's Jason, HARTMAN.com/Lutz. That's Jason, HARTMAN.com/Lutz. Jason knows how to help you retire with a portfolio of income-producing property. Go to jasonhartman.com/Lutz.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.